Welcome back, everyone. The votes are in, and Denver has a new mayor-elect. Mike Johnson is currently in the lead in the runoff elections. Joining us this morning is election analyst Alton Dillard. Thank you so much for joining us. No one has any sleep this morning. No, everyone was up late looking at election results. You know, can you walk us through just the numbers when it comes to turnout for a runoff election and how that compares to previous years?
Yeah, for the runoff, right now it seems to be trending just a little bit lower. The last mayoral runoff, of course, was Hancock versus Gillis, and that came in at around 40% of active. Now, of course, that was not an open race, so of course that changes the dynamics slightly. But one of the things you can do when you're watching the feed from Denver elections, you can actually see the ballot boxes coming in from the field. And I saw a lot more being carried like this than I saw on hand trucks, and that made me think that perhaps that big Tuesday rush was not going to be quite as large.
Why do you think that is, that the turnout was so different this time?
You know what? I think one of the things is there was not a huge gulf between the two candidates. And so I really picked up a vibe of Denver could do much worse than either of them. And I also think there might have been just a little bit of, election fatigue. Everyone sorted through those 17, then 16 candidates. And I think that probably played a role, I wouldn't say in suppressing the turnout, but I just think that people think the city's going to be in good hands with either choice.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey over the last couple of months. Like you were talking about, Kelly Brough and Mike Johnson were so aligned, right? Both centrist candidates. A lot of their policies were similar to one another. So what do you think actually resulted in Johnson pulling apart and moving ahead? I
would think a couple things. Even in a centrist city like Denver, the differentiation on how they're maybe going to tackle the homelessness issue. I still also was sort of wondering about, some of the endorsements. We are still in the post-George Floyd society here, and I was wondering if having the endorsement of law enforcement, for instance, was going to help or hurt. And then also when Lisa Calderon threw her support behind, even though tepidly, but it seemed that made it sort of a look between center left and center right, and Denver's always going to, I think, lean more towards the center left, even though we do have a sort of development heavy, business friendly city right now.
Speaking of, last night Johnson was talking about how the inverted L, Northwest, West Denver neighborhoods really came out in support of him, and he thinks that helped him, win this election. What do you see in the numbers? In
those kind of numbers, I could see the same thing. One thing with him is he has a certain way of engaging with people. So even though he may not have come off as, say, the most sympathetic person in, say, the Holly book and documentary, the fact that he has been boots on the ground, the fact that he has represented what was at the time a sort of mixed racial demographic district when he was in the State House succeeding my good friend, State Senator Peter Groff. I think that probably helped cement that, and a little bit of his backstory, in working in rural schools in Mississippi and, meeting his wife and Teach for America, those kind of things, I think really sort of resonated. But you did have two candidates with two very compelling backstories.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in so early and giving us perspective. We always appreciate it.
Thank you.